My name is Stuart Cartwright, and my partner in crime in this little venture is Ant Lockyer. Say hello, Ant.
Hello.
Good to be here. So this little Onroad podcast came about because of a thread on Facebook. And no, it didn't actually. It came about the most recent podcast done by Aidan Burke, which is called Ant.
It's called the Extra Lap RC podcast.
Check those buggy guys out. And they were saying how it'd be nice to have an on-road podcast. And so Ant and I put our heads together and thought we'd come up with a podcast that hopefully can fill you in with some latest news, views, interviews with people involved with on-road, and hopefully it'll take some interest. What are your thoughts on this whole podcast venture, Ant?
Well, I like listening to podcasts. As you know, I enjoy buggy racing as you do, and there's probably 8 really good quality podcasts that I listen to from around the world that just make driving to places a little bit easier. And I feel like I've been tricked into doing this one because I never wanted to do it in the first place. So so Aidan has somehow tricked me into agreeing to do this with you, and here we are. But I mean, hopefully it's a good thing and people aren't. The reason I didn't want to do it is because I thought people were just going to moan about it. So hopefully they don't, and hopefully they enjoy it, and we all have a good time.
Yeah, and well done, Aidan. That's all I can say. Yeah, I'm sort of new to podcasts really, and the Extra Lap podcast I have listened to purely because of the whole buggy thing that I've got involved with, as you have, which has been a lot of fun during the summer. But let's not go on about buggy because this is about on-road. So we will swiftly move on. But you must try and listen to the on-road the Extra Lap podcast, because it's very informative and got some interesting views on there. So what's in the news, Ant? What's been going on?
Okay, news item. The one news item that I thought was quite something was that RC Discharger, a chap called Rodolphe, who, as I'm sure everyone knows, made a machine that has got a lipo in it, and it was famously we were famously told that it couldn't be used in the UK because it had a lipo outside of a bag. He's since built one that's got a lipo bag, and it does a regenerative discharge. So he's been working on all sorts of things with the iCharger, and yesterday posted that he is now able to cycle lipos at 70 amps. 1S lipos at 70 amps. That's charge and discharge, and personally, I am absolutely terrified of the prospect, as are a few other people that have said, why would you want to do it? But obviously, you know, it has its place. People are using discharge banks and that sort of stuff at the moment to get 40 amps. So this might be something we see in the pits at some point.
And just, I've got a funny story about discharging and charging, which I'll come on to in a moment. But if for those of the public out there that don't know the benefits of charging and discharging at 70 amps, what are the potential benefits of this?
The internal resistance of the lipo is the thing that you're trying to affect, and the lower the internal resistance, the more punch, the more power, the faster your car. Yeah, in stock classes. So this is primarily a blinky problem, and you're basically trying to get the battery hot.
Well, I was one of my first nationals. It was at Newbury, and I was sitting next to Andrew Thompson, a very good friend of mine and yours, and he was charging. And it was either charging or discharging at 40 amps. That's immaterial really, but the cable that was going to the LiPo was pulsing. It had a heartbeat. And I have to say, I did feel slightly nervous at this pulsing cable, which was just unbelievable. So when I hear of 70 amps charging and discharging, it's not something that I'd want to be sat next to be quite honest.
No. I mean, I think that Mod 12 and Mod Buggy indoors on a flat out track is pulling like, well over 100 amps. So it's nothing that the battery can't do. But as you saw at the weekend, I in my Mod Buggy flat out on an indoor track, it decided to grow to twice its size, and it was so big I couldn't get it back out of the car. So yeah, they can only take so much abuse. So we shall see.
And the reaction can be quite scary. So no, interesting stuff. We'll watch this space about
from
these 70 amps.
Yeah.
Yes, hopefully. Now, obviously on the back of the Worlds last week, week before last, wasn't it? Crikey, it's gone quick already. Lots of interesting stuff. I suppose the most or one of the exciting parts of the Worlds was seeing the Awesomatix car that has been brought to the table. A friend of mine that I made from going to the New York GP that's held in October every year, Donnie Lear. He owns a track that's really, it's his private little track that he opens to the public. He said he doesn't make any money out of it, and I can well believe it because it's an unbelievable facility. He was a Roche guy, and I believe that Roche are the US distributors also of Awesomatix, or the same group distribute Roche and Awesomatix, and I think they've split the team up, and Donnie was one of the guys that moved over to the Awesomatix car, so I was lucky enough to get a bit of a sight of it before the official release, which took place sort of on the Friday or the Saturday, I think. What are your thoughts on this new chassis?
I think it's mad as a box of frogs, and I've looked at the pictures. I've looked at the car in real life, and then I've spent quite way too much time looking at the pictures, and I still can't work it out. It's the pivots at the front. It's like I don't know. It's like a hybrid between a T-bar car and a link car, and it's got all sorts of all sorts of magic going on. The front kingpins and the axles are just completely different to what we've seen. I'm excited to see how it goes in real life conditions. I think that they struggled to get steering.
Final, though, didn't it?
It did make
the A final, didn't it?
Yeah, I think that they struggled to get steering at first at the Worlds. I think that's possibly not much of a surprise given the servos in front of the axles and stuff. But yeah, eventually they said that they got it going good. Donnie managed to go straight on at the end of the straight through the plastic barrier. Got wedged. It's a really funny story on RC Tech.
I did that at Donnie's track.
Right, but the difference was that this car should have been in 25 pieces, and he indicated to the marshal to put it back on the floor, which he did, and he carried on driving. The only damage that he had was that he'd bent the titanium screws holding the front bumper on.
Wow.
And he said if he had steel screws in there, it would have just carried on as if nothing had happened.
Wow, impressive.
Yeah, so
impressive. Well, that's I think any time, a bit like this, it reminds me of the Serpent. The Serpent 12th car that came out a little while ago that I may have purchased and built and drove at Eastbourne in practice. It reminded me a little bit of that, to be honest. And I think you can't knock anyone that's trying to do something different, and all the more for it, really, because it can only be a good thing. There must be something, even I can't believe that it's not going to have some sort of popularity, because obviously they're touring car. I'm not. I did a year of touring car, but the Awesomatix touring car must have had its critics when that first came out, and actually that's a good performing platform, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's this one guy, Oleg, has come up with these designs, and I think that when he first came out with the Awesomatix TC way back when, it was a lot weirder than it is now. It was I think it had a shaft drive, and the A700 was a shaft drive car when everyone went to belts years before. So yeah, there were plenty of detractors, and now, I mean, we'll get on to Reinhard in a bit, but now the car performs basically better than anything else.
I think very quickly people are getting a flavour on who's carrying the intellect in this podcast.
Yeah, well, see, I don't want people to think that I actually know any other than stuff that I read on the internet. So I'm not the smart guy. I just read a lot.
Well, I'd like to think I bring the jokery and the japery, and you bring the brawn. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll see how that moves on. You've touched on him, the new world champion of modified 12 scale, Mark Reinhard, running a Schumacher. What are your thoughts on Awesomatix, Mark Reinhard, etc., etc.?
Yeah, so before the Worlds, obviously he announced that he was going to run a Schumacher, and not long after he announced that he was no longer going to be running for Infinity touring cars, or at all, wasn't going to be on the Infinity team anymore, and that he was going to be sponsored by his brother's shop, Tony Sport, which is obviously a very big shop in Germany and across Europe. And part of running for Tony was that he was going to just choose to run whatever chassis he felt like running, and was quite excited about the prospect. This is just from the stuff that he wrote on Facebook. So he chose an Awesomatix for the first race, which was the GP3F last week, and he came second behind Volker. Interestingly, he was second in front of Yannick Prumper, who also was on Infinity and then wasn't at the same time that Mark wasn't, and he used a Awesomatix as well. So it's it's I think it's probably every other manufacturer's worst nightmare that Mark, on the back of a world champ win, 15 years after his first world championship win, or however long it is now using the Awesomatix, and on his first run out, knowing nothing about it, and after a huge crash in Q4, which smashed the car to smithereens, and it was still tweaked in F1, managed to come second in the first race, and won the third race, A3, so second overall.
Yeah, pretty impressive stuff, really.
Yeah.
I'd have to confess I know the name Mark Reinhard, and obviously he has a bit of a branding with equipment and stuff, but obviously I'm not that au fait with how good he is until I watched him at the Worlds. You'd have to say he's fairly deep with his skill set. He can certainly wheel it on the track, can't he?
Yeah, he's not rubbish.
No.
I was listening
and screams Hollywood as well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, big tall German, baseball cap on back to front. Germany being a sport, motorsport haven in Europe. And he's your archetypal talented motorsport German guy, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sure I told you that, and I probably told you to keep it a secret, but I'm letting it out now that when I was at Arena 33, Mark walked in, and I actually felt a little bit starstruck. Oh look, there's Mark. His brother had been there the whole time, but yeah. So he does ooze that kind of professionalism, and yeah, he's got that old school style where he just carries bags of corner speed. Ollie Payne talks about old school versus the new school, where Ollie's very much in that kind of jam it into the corner, get it turned around, get back on the gas. Mark, he looks slow. And a buggy podcast, the No Name RC podcast, they were talking about Mark as well, and just saying how it just looks slow, and they know how it looks slow and why and the mechanics of it, but unable to replicate that kind of driving style.
Yeah, and that's a trend throughout all good drivers, isn't it? Apart from excuse me, Ollie looks like he's trying to wrestle the beast. So does Alex Hagberg, doesn't he? I mean, they look two guys that look like they are on the very edge of disaster. But watched Ollie, obviously, as many people have in Euros and national championships and stuff. But watching him in New York a few times, the tracks were a little bit more open and they were a little bit more high tariff, a lot of speed, and it's something to behold when you see the kind of accuracy of that with that style of driving. But when you look at someone like Mark, it looks like that's easy. That is almost gives you a sense of hope, doesn't it? Watching Reinhard drive, but it never gives you a sense of hope watching Ollie drive.
No.
Watching Ollie drive, you think, no, I can't do that. Nope, no. But if you watch Mark drive, you go, I think maybe there's half a chance. Of course, there's not.
No.
I'm telling everyone I think that there's not, but of course, deep down, I really believe that I can do that. But there's a still sense that it would be possible had you get the car set up right, etc., etc. But so I much prefer watching old school driving. Ollie Jeffries is like that as well. He to me screams old school, not Ollie and Alex.
Yeah, interesting.
Do you not see that?
No, I think that he's possibly somewhere in the middle. There's a definite touring car style that comes out in his 12th. I mean, you watch his hands on the transmitter. He's certainly super aggressive with his inputs. They don't necessarily translate to what the car's doing. But Bruno, again, he's touring car and buggy, super aggressive. The Japanese drivers, they've got that kind of aggressiveness, which possibly comes from growing up on super high bite tracks and yeah, I don't know, just a new way of doing it. But when we go club racing and we've got Ollie and David, I will watch David run because I feel that there is more for me to learn there. Yeah. Like you say, it's something I feel I've got much more of a chance of being able to replicate than the positively terrifying style of Ollie, which is undeniably super fast. But as Mark's shown, old school can still do the business.
Yeah. Reminds me of wrestling the mother-in-law, and you never win those wrestling competitions. Anyway, let's talk about the Worlds, because we've touched on it with Mark winning and the Awesomatix release. We were there. I felt truly fortunate to be there. How was it for you? What did you take away from the few days in the luxury of Milton Keynes, the land of the roundabout?
I took the flu away with me.
Everyone was complaining about the flu, but I not a jot.
I think it was only you and Chris Wilkinson that didn't get ill out of the 120 people.
We were the carriers.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that one of the Japanese guys had died. He was just laying on his table, and did not look good. But
was that the chap was that the chap with the hoodie on and the face mask?
The blanket round him, yeah.
Yeah.
Not a world champ.
Look well. Yeah, not well.
The event was the best radio control car event that I've been to. And before we went, I was a little bit concerned because I've been to some big-ish events in the past, like the Euros, and I find it all a little bit tiring. And some of the rules and officialness of it gets on my nerves a little bit, and I can find it a little bit difficult to deal with emotionally. But
100% agree with that.
But this was obviously there were a couple of there was one highly talked about incident with the rules, but in general the team all did an amazing job, and we were told exactly what to do, and things were dished out fairly. If you were over voltage, you got a warning, and we would. At no point did you feel that you were being hard done by. Neil and Gav and everyone behind the scenes checking the cars, Pete. Top job. The track was absolutely incredible. So difficult in mod at my level. The grip was immensely great. The amount of kind of rubber that had been laid down with the clever choice of A-foam and Spider Blue. I heard a few people complaining about their cars were really difficult to start. Now, I've suffered that in nationals before and sorted out my tyre prep, so I actually didn't have that at the Worlds, so I was pleased about that. But yeah, all in all, just a fantastic event. And I was thinking that I was going to come away from it not wanting to look at an RC car again for at least a month, and that wasn't the case. I just wanted to go racing the next day, basically.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
Yeah. That's an interesting point you made about not wanting to touch an RC car for months afterwards. That was on the forefront of my mind going into it, because I know when you do a national, come Sunday night, I never want to see a car again. And yet, as like you, and I think many others as well, I was itching to get back at it on the Monday.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure why that was. The atmosphere in the pits on Saturday and Sunday was up there with some of the best sporting arenas I've managed to work in, fortunately, and I thought it was a real sense of occasion, and the ability to be able to produce that running toy cars around a carpet, I think was just an absolute triumph. So I took away from it the same frustrations of every other event that I always run in. I never feel like I do well enough. But for me, I just enjoy the challenge, and having the challenge of doing well in a big arena just adds to it. So, like you, I thought the track was fantastic. It was quite interesting listening to people talk about how difficult it was to go 8 minutes without a mistake. That's Oscar racing, isn't it? I mean, I think that's the 8 minutes and not hearing anything is the challenge. So I was I was really pleased that it was uber tight. I don't know if you could have gone another level up. I think you could have done. I think it could have gone even harder, but I don't know whether that would have been detrimental. But the track was faultless. I think the grandstand was fantastic. The fact that they had monitors up, had interviews with that lady on Sunday, commentary, some Stephen Lander. Is that right? Is that the name of right? Steve Lander. Yeah.
That's right.
I think he was very good as well. And the opportunity for kiddies to have a go with cars, brilliant, wasn't it? That it's faultless. The bit that I had angst with was my body shells. this cut line business. I posted up some pictures of my body shells that I got done by a chap in southern Spain, a TAC RC. Cost me a decent amount of money. The first thing Mark Dewitt says was they're not going to be able to get through tech because they're cut above the line. It didn't make the looking forward to the week go as nice as it could have done, thinking about I might have to cut out 3 shells and run a white body. But fortunately, I think common sense prevailed in that regard, and there wasn't anyone that failed a body shell all weekend, not that I know of anyway. And I think I was concerned that it was going to be a worlds about the rules and not about racing, and it didn't turn out that way, which was really good. So all in all, best experience of my RC career to date, without doubt. Yeah, it was good. How did you feel about running mod? Were you pleased that you did mod in the end?
Yeah, totally. So for me, the World Championships is the modified class, right? That to me is the pinnacle of the sport, and not saying that it's the Premier League above the championship or whatever. I know that most of the guys in stock would have beat me in stock, and I probably would have ended up in a similar position there. But for me, you think it's because I like extremes, but just that to me is the pinnacle of our sport, and that's what I wanted to do for the only World Championships that I thought I was going to do. How do you feel about doing stock? Was that the right decision?
Yeah, I've done mod and stock. Mod not. I think you need to be. I'm not good enough to do both at the same meeting for one. Of course, that was never open anyway. But I like the closeness, and we had this discussion when yourself and Chris Wilkinson, G went out, and Mark Rogers went out for dinner. We're talking about the amount of racing that actually goes in mod. I'm not good enough to race in mod, and so for that reason, come finals day, I want to be in a stock car, and I think that's what I enjoy about racing. Actually, nose to tail stuff, and I don't feel like I can do that with a modified car. It's too fast, happens all too quickly, and the implications of getting it wrong is too high tariff for me. So yeah, I was happy to do the stock class.
But there was racing in mod. It was nose to tail for the top guys. It wasn't for me really. I mean, spread of abilities in my heat was pretty wide. So, but you had moments where you were running with someone else and catching someone else or whatever. So it did have the elements of that. I mean, the first time I did a Euro mod, 6.5 Blinky event in Limburg, the first time I'd ever done a final with that sort of horsepower, and all through qualifying it was fine. It was fast, it was scary, but you could get round if you just took it easy. soon as you get into a final situation and you've got 4 guys in front of you and 4 guys behind you, and you're all going through a chicane at the same speed, it's something else. It is terrifying. But I like that, it's
yeah. I can believe that, and you do tune into it, don't you? I remember in New York, the first time that I ran there, my stock car was poop, and so I concentrated on the mod, and that was no, it was 3.5. It just wasn't open; it was blinky. And you do, by the end, you do tune in, and the speed all of a sudden disappears, and you just get dialed in. So yeah, I can definitely believe that. I can definitely believe that, but I just don't feel like I'm good enough to do it. I just feel like I'm going to spend the whole weekend rebuilding my car, which I do in stock anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I broke my car. Don't get me wrong. I'm sat at my desk now, and there are broken bits everywhere, as I can't face to throw any of it in the bin yet. But yeah, the whole mod versus stock thing is something that I'm not as good as you, but I do prefer mod, or have preferred mod, right up until the Pool National, actually, where I switched to using a Roche, and for various reasons, and got some help from Ollie, and the car was absolutely unbelievable. Ollie Payne. And the car in stock, for the first time, I felt like I could really compete, and it was just night and day difference to where I'd been previously. And I've had Roches before, obviously ran the Yokomo for a long time, ran the Zen car, so the kind of DNA was there in the cars that I'd had, but just going to the Evo with a bell crank steering and all that, suddenly it was just like, wow, this thing's really easy to drive, and all I'm focusing on is just not letting off and just going as fast as I can through every section. So now my kind of enjoyment in 13.5 has been rekindled a little bit. I don't massively enjoy a 6.5 blinky, having done 3.5, because it's a little bit harsh, and the power delivery in 3.5 makes it easier. You can be smoother with it. So yeah, I think that there's probably a lot more stock racing in my future.
Oh, good. Now, there was a notable push in this World Championships by Schumacher to really take their car forwards and make it a World Championship winning car. And I think you could pretty much say that they did that. It was the star of the show, really, wasn't it? I mean, they took mod, they took stock. What do you think about the Schumacher car as a whole?
I think that so they did hit it with a very big stick. So they had Mark and Orlowski and Ollie Jeffries. So
nice description. Hit it with a very big stick. I like that.
They were playing the percentages, right?
Yeah.
No one else came with that sort of force.
No.
So I've never touched an Eclipse. I've never owned a Schumacher car, but before the event, I would have said that it was a very good low grip car. Having seen the successes that they'd had at national level, people running it at club level, it looked like it performed well, and that Andy had come up with something that worked in the conditions that he ran in. They switched to an alley chassis at the Worlds, which I know that they've tried before and have gone back to carbon. But it seems like they made an alley chassis that worked, and they got it right this time.
And I believe that they ran the alley chassis at the Chesterfield meet the week before, didn't they? It started on the Wednesday, and I went up to Chesterfield. I think there was it was a Saturday night, and then a full day on the Sunday before the Worlds, and they all ran it there,
right?
With success. So, I think anyone that is comfortable with showing that they're trying really hard and is all right with failing is all right with me. They put it out there that they are trying to win at all costs, aren't they? I mean, they are trying to, with their Atom, with their Eclipse, with the drivers that they got, they were throwing, as you say, everything in the kitchen sink and using a big stick to win it. And I'm excited for them. The fact that they've won the Worlds, they've tried hard with the Worlds, they've kept on investing in GT12. I think they've done super well with it. And Andy Murray we've got on the show a little bit later. It'd be interesting to hear his insights with what the run-in has been like for him, because I would think it must be an exceptionally proud young man with where the car's come from and the success it's had.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've got a national coming up. We'll talk more about the Schumacher car obviously when Andy's on the show, but we got the national coming up this weekend at Chesterfield, who, by the way, I mean, how good has Chesterfield become with new carpet, Kevin Creaser, Andy Smith? They have absolutely thrown everything at it at Chesterfield, and it's my favourite place to race, no doubt. What do you think about Chesterfield? How do you feel about the efforts that they've put in? You've been there since it's
Never been. I've never been to Chesterfield.
God. Oh,
it
my
always,
goodness.
No, so I was never going to do the full season this year, mainly because I thought Worlds not going to look at a toy car, especially don't want to go and race 12 2 weeks after. But yeah, I've never been to Chesterfield, but I have obviously, watched the videos and seen all the efforts that have gone in. And that meeting that you were talking about before the Worlds just looked amazing. The facility's good and the carpet's good and 100% effort and it looks like it's paying off.
Yeah, I've got a lot of love for Kevin Creaser. I'll be brutally honest. My first introduction to 12 scale driver's briefing felt like I was being spoken to like a small boy. Didn't really sit well with my ego, but getting to know the chap, he's a lovely man, and he's got a lot of time for 12 scale, and as they all have. I mean, everyone that runs at that club, they've got such a passion for 12 scale, and I'm really excited to get back up there. Chesterfield North Premier Inn, standard, curry with the boys on Friday night. And it's a really enjoyable couple of days up there. So, how do you think the national's going to play out? Because it's going to feel weird, isn't it? I mean, we've just had the Worlds. I was just seeing online earlier that they've got the biggest entrance they've ever had, or something.
Right.
And they're just saying about they've got enough tables and chairs, but if you can stick one in the car, it'd be appreciated just in case. So. It's just going to be a bit strange. A lot of people. Is this a sweeping statement or is it not? It feels like a lot of British guys didn't do quite as well as they had hoped. Would you say that? Is that fair to say?
No, I think that you're possibly just thinking about specifics, and no, I think that. Anyone who didn't win was disappointed that they didn't win.
Yeah, of course.
But I think that in general, people's individual performances were good.
Okay, I'll take that back then. But I think it will be I think it's going to be interesting to see how it is this weekend. I think, like the GT12 Worlds, that was not on the same scale as the 12 scale Worlds. I don't want to put it in the same boat, but there feels like there's such a passion for 12 scale right now, and I don't think this national could have come at a better time, because I think everyone is still super itching to race their 12 scale car. I think it's going to be a really competitive meeting. I'm really interested to see how everyone gets on, because it's going to feel very different. I think all of a sudden you haven't got that 2.5 hours of gap between each run that we had at the Worlds, and I think nationals feel rushed an hour and a bit, so I'm sure it's going to feel even worse this weekend. But looking forward to running on that carpet and seeing some familiar faces and seeing how we get on. You're going to be missed. You're not there, are you? You're at home.
I am.
You're going to be.
Well, I might go and race buggies.
Race buggies.
Yes.
So just briefly about what we both run. What's the 12 scale that you run, and give the folks out there a little bit of a rundown on the kit that you run and any sponsors that help you out?
Yeah. So Zen Racing helped me out with a bunch of stuff. I'm not like a sponsored driver, but David and Ollie helped me with setup and telling me what to do and all that sort of stuff. And since Pool National, I've run 2 Roche PG12 Evos, which, as I said, were just game changing. I learned so much in the 2-week period from Ollie saying, get a Roche and I'll help you, to turning up to that national, that it's just totally changed how I feel about the cars. And I actually want to go back and try some stuff on the Yokomo now, just to see if what I've learned is applicable to other platforms. Moody Falls, Remo, he is a sponsor, and he does help me out with all his titanium screws and brass screws now, but I haven't run any of those yet. So but everyone that I speak to just helps me out. It's I've never got anything but love and help from everyone in the 12 scale community. It's great. How about yourself?
Well, since I think the middle of last year, I run the X-Ray X12, run the 2020 car. I get some help from Greg at RC Disco. I also get help and advice from Alex Hagberg, who is at the Worlds was, and the lead up to the Worlds was extremely influential in what car I took to the Worlds in terms of its setup. But I suppose I'm hugely indebted to Dave Spashett, Paul Roadmark, and Ollie Payne at Zen Racing, really from the get-go. I mean, from the days of Maritime, those of you that might remember it, down in Kent, I mean, they've given me huge insight and info into how to set up and run the car, etc., and various race meets. So, but the 12th, as you said, the 12th scale community is hugely helpful, isn't it? And the advice that you get is great. And Ulti Tires, I get some help from them, and that's about it really. But I've run various platforms, and I've just found my home at X-Ray. Really, I like the product, I like the kit, and I like the help I get from Alex Hagberg. I think he's if you're going to take help and advice, off of someone. I think Alex is probably quite a good chap to do it. But the guys at Zen Racing are equally as great guys and super helpful. So
should we talk about sponsorship or my views on sponsorship?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a topic that that is always brandished about, isn't it? I mean, I think I always love the Monday morning of people posting about, I'd like to thank my sponsors and all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't seem like there's a driver out there that hasn't got some form of sponsorship. And share your views, young Ant.
Yeah, so a few other podcasters have been vocal about how the RC industry is killing itself with everyone being sponsored, and t-shirt sponsorships, etc., captive customer bases and that sort of thing. But for me, so the Zen thing, David and Paul and Ollie in me have created a fan. So I'm a fan of their product. I'm a fan of them, and that kind of being part of their world. That's why I said it's not sponsorship. I get help, but it's not like I'm a sponsored driver. And in the buggy world, we see everyone sponsored, right? Every buggy race we go to, every single person is wearing a t-shirt of the manufacturer, and they're all sponsored. And I always just thought it was a little bit ridiculous, actually. And when I started buggying, I just bought a buggy that I liked and I went and run it. And it's actually joining a team. So the team thing is something else. And I think that so in buggies, I am part of Nemo Racing, the team that run Yokomo buggies, and I am sponsored by Nemo Racing, but really I probably should, hopefully none of them will listen to this, but I'd be happy to pay full price for everything. And what I do get out of the team is being a part of something, knowing that I can turn up to an event and get help and support, and that if I haven't got a part that I've broken, someone else will have it. All of the things that I had in 12 scale and have in 12 scale, running a Zen car or a Roche car, and being part of a team. So that to me is what people are getting out of the sponsorship, not the discounts. And there is possibly an opportunity somewhere to kind of come out of this thing, like the Schumacher drivers. I know that they've probably got all different tiers of sponsorship, the same as Nemo have, and you wear a t-shirt at the event and we'll give you 5% off or 10% off or whatever, but you are part of this thing, and we're all going to sit together and we're all going to go out for dinner together, and if you need help, we're going to be there for you. And I think that to me is the true value of sponsorship, not the monetary value. So that's my thoughts, basically.
Yeah, I think I find the whole team thing a bit of a strange concept, that everyone's trying to help everyone. I like that idea, that you are part of something. I've never felt part of a team as much as I do with X-Ray. I like that. I would happily pay for that.
Yeah.
Do you know? If someone said to me, "If you come and be part of our team, we will teach you how to do X, Y, Z, and for that, we will, or you will, enjoy your RC experience more." I think the false economy is that when you're getting a cheaper car with a sponsorship package, obviously Schumacher are well known for, giving discounts to racers, and for that they create a huge following, which is what they want to do. And does that necessarily make their drivers better for it because they're getting a car at a cheaper price? Does it mean that they're necessarily racing better, or is it that they're just racing for cheaper? And I think that's up for debate. But for me, I don't necessarily want cheap kit. I want to enjoy my racing more, and for that, I need to have help, advice, and growth in my knowledge to make that experience better.
Yeah.
Being a good driver, you or a sponsored driver, I think you need to take on the fact that you need to pay for the discount that you're getting, and for that you need to post up what you're running. You need to message other drivers that are running the product. You need to be on hand, whatever it is. But the people that are getting cheap kit, I never see. I mean, a few people know that G and I got involved with Ulti Tires, etc., and we helped Ollie get a deal. Now Ollie puts out there info on his tires, as he should do as a sponsored driver. Alex is always online, very visible, promoting all the stuff that he's using. If you think about all of the sponsored drivers out there, if they all did that, could you imagine how much RC you would have in your face on a daily basis?
Yeah.
But I think that's what you should be doing if you're an alleged sponsored driver. So I think it's a bit of a strange fraternity of how people get sponsorship and what they think they should do with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
the other thing, that just one thing more on the team aspect, is that, and this is a little bit weird, but the worst part about RC car racing for me is worrying where I'm going to sit at a national.
Oh my God, I'm with you.
I just can't stand it.
I know.
It's a Friday night, and someone's like, "I'm at the track. I'm trying to get you. I'm trying to stick your name on a table, but it keeps on getting moved." And it's like, I'm just like, all I want to do is know that I'm going to be sat next to at least one person that I know, and I'm terrified.
So at the Worlds, Geraint Williams, he got a late spot in mod, and so we managed to sneak him in. It was supposed to be a 6-foot table. We divided 2 6-footers between 3 of us, so he sat between me and James Egan. Behind me was Alex Hagberg, and next to Alex was Matt Lax. So I felt I'd done really well. I'd had a really nice spot until appreciating how many people speak to Alex Hagberg at a meeting. And I put a post up on a group that I run called the RC Experience. And I couldn't believe how many people came up to Alex and asked for setup advice. And the worry about whether he was about to go out or whether he's just come off, there was no concern. And I found it astonishing that someone of his grade got pestered to the level that he did. I've not talked to him about this, and he hasn't passed any comments on it. But I was astounded by it. And so, talking of the pit space that he needed to have, he needed to be about 4 rows back where nobody could get to him.
Yeah.
Because, sweet Lord, I mean, he was attentive to everyone, everyone. It was amazing to watch. It was amazing to watch, to then go out. He obviously had a bit of a tough time in qualifying, but to still then deal with other people's problems as well as his own. It was the guy is very good at what he does.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't like that whole turning up on a Friday night and getting the right pit space. It's not a pleasant experience.
No.
Especially when people say, "Oh, we're opening up at 7:30," and then you turn up there at 7:30, and there's 50 people in the room that are all set up. They haven't just turned up; they're all set up. So I take that personally, because clearly they tell me to turn up much later than they're telling everyone else. So.
Yeah. Not on the special list that gets different info. Yeah.
No, definitely not at all. So coming up in the show, we're going to have Andy Murray talking about his world's experience, the stock world champion, and also a young up and comer, the lovely Morgan Williams. Hasn't he done well? Hasn't he progressed super well over the last 24 months?
Very, very well. I've got things to say about Morgan, but I'm gonna do those in the interview.
Brilliant. Okay, well, he's coming up next. So let's get him on.
Interviews.
Well, we have one of the biggest up and coming racers there is in 12 scale right now, Morgan Williams. Welcome to the show.
Oh, yeah.
So Morgan, you're in the Zen camp, Zen Racing. Tell us a little bit about the car that you run at the moment.
So I run the Roche P12 Evo. That's obviously designed by Max and Ollie. So it's the car that I used at the Worlds that's recently just been. We run a fairly standard setup, I suppose, to what everybody else runs. Works everywhere. We use Roche Gold front springs. I like the yellow side springs with the Yokomo Gold center spring. We use 10K in the sides. But also now we started using the floating servo mount instead of the bell crank, which feels a lot nicer than the bell crank does. For me personally, anyway, and for me, it makes an 8-minute run a lot easier to finish.
I can hear everyone writing down your setup sheet as they're listening to this, hoping that is going to be good enough to get them in the A final at the Worlds.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's been a pretty exciting few years from you, because you've come from oval racing. That's right, where you started. Where did you run oval racing?
So we run at a club in a town called Haywards Heath in Sussex. So I started there just over 3 years ago, and they do a number of different classes. And I started using brush motors and cells and things like that, which is a lot different to what we use in 12 scale now. But then I progressed into one of their top classes, which uses brushless 10.5 system. So they do like close to 90 laps in 5 minutes and 2.9 second laps and all that sort of stuff.
My goodness me, 2.9 second laps.
Yeah,
I'm not sure my brain could compute that. So obviously, to give the viewers or the listeners a bit more of an insight. I mean, you've been doing 12 scale a couple of years now, 3 years?
So I've been racing just over 3 years, and then probably about 2.5 years doing 12 scale and GT12.
And obviously, you've moved up through the F grade. You're F2 at the moment, but I'm sure you're going to be bumped up to F1, are you not?
Well, hopefully.
Yeah.
I was F2 at the last national, yeah.
Yeah.
previous years I hadn't done enough rounds, so trying to progress that was a little bit hard, but hopefully now, yeah.
Yeah. So you did go into the Worlds as an F2, officially an F2 driver, but you qualified 9th in the A final or 10th in the A final?
I qualified 9th,
yeah.
and then after a bit of bad luck with some issues in the final, I finished 10th.
Yeah. So I wouldn't have thought an Ant, who is clearly the brains behind this whole podcast thing, I'm sure there hasn't been anyone at a World Championship who's been an F2 driver that's probably stuck it in an A final, is there? And I can't imagine.
Pretty sure there hasn't been.
So it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride for the last 2.5, 3 years. Have you got a sort of a motorsport background with parents and stuff?
No, not really. We we always like the look of like full size racing and things like that, and always like you do watch the F1 on TV and things like that. But yeah, it wasn't really until like meeting Ollie and meeting the guys at Zen that I really got into it and sort of caught the bug, I suppose. And now I don't want to stop racing.
Yeah, it kind of captures you, doesn't it? So obviously you were out in New York with G and I. That was the first time you'd race at New York, but hadn't you done snowbirds earlier in the year?
Snowbird. Yeah, I did snowbirds earlier in the year. That was my first time racing in America, and that was a really cool experience. Getting used to the way that they race and seeing how much the level of racing out there is so high. And then New York a few months ago, that was next level. That was awesome. That was really good.
Stuck it in the A final there as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I qualified 8th there and ended up finishing 6th.
Yeah, it's good. It was a good week. So obviously you got a good friendship with Ollie. How much does he pass on his words of wisdom to you?
Quite a bit. He's helped me a lot with getting used to sort of ways to drive the car a bit better, and giving me feedback on how I drive, and maybe he answers questions that I've got, because every race I want to learn more and more. And he's really good at being able to sort of answer those questions. Where if I do this, same with David, I suppose, at Zen, he does the same. The Zen camp, I suppose, are really good at all helping each other and listening to what happens on track and, being able to point us in the right direction.
Now, there is something that we need to bring up about the Worlds, Morgan, is that you let me down in a pretty big way, because you were supposed to be my mechanic and you got a last minute race.
He's been waiting to bring this up. Do you know what? I
was like, right, let's get Morgan on because I need to have a word with him. So I was very pleased to not have a mechanic and see you do well. And you had a bet with your dad, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. My dad, he'd come up on a Friday just before we started seeding practice, and we were standing over at the Chamois stand, and me and Ollie were joking about how I've wanted an M17 for a little while, and we joking. I said to him, if I make the top 10, will you get me one? And joking, he said, yeah, sure, I'll be able to do it. So we shook on it, and in that last seeding round after that, I went 8th, and he went a little bit white after that. But,
haven't you got an M17 as well, Ant?
I have, yeah. but I was trying to keep that secret so that my wife didn't know.
Oh.
So she won't listen to this. She won't get an hour into a podcast and still be listening.
All the guys out there, what is it that you find the biggest thing that you need to get your head around at, say, a national meet, Morgan? What is it that you feel that is something that you're always striving to get better at?
For me, it's always like making an 8-minute run without crashing and things like that. Like David said a couple of times, if you tap, that might be a place, because when you get to the top end of a national, you're all within sort of 4 or 5 seconds of each other, and a tap could cost you 3 or 4 tenths, or having to be marshalled might drop you a final and things like that. So for me, it's always trying to finish a full 8 minutes, being happy that I didn't, hit too much or get caught up in too much. Sometimes you don't need to be the fastest car, just need to be able to finish that 8-minute run.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? That I've always gone with the whole got to be as quick as I can over one lap. Forget the 8 minutes. But I'm no great shakes, but the 8 minutes is a real. You hear that when I've been doing a lot more buggies this summer, this winter rather, and coming into the Worlds, because I feel like the buggy actually helped my 12 scale driving. Doing the 5 minutes, and then I turned up at Tamworth and I got to 5 minutes or 6 minutes and it says 2 minutes to go. It's like, oh my goodness, it feels like I've been up here a week. And I think it's not easy from anyone coming from 5 and 6 minute heats to turning up and doing an 8 minute heat. People just don't appreciate the endurance needed to just keep going.
No, it's. I take my hat off to all the guys at the World running mod and things like that. Having to do an 8-minute run of that looks really difficult. But yeah, for me, that's the biggest thing, just finishing 8 minutes. And, if you can bang a really fast lap in somewhere or, have great pace, then that's a bonus.
Yeah. Ollie said about you, Morgan, once. He was talking to someone, a friend of ours, and he said there's only one person who works harder than Ant at radio control, and that's Morgan. So I'm guessing that the effort you've put in has been rewarded. And,
it was an awesome feeling to make that final after that last run. It was, I try and race as much as I possibly can, whether it's oval or 12 scale circuit, or it's I just love it. And every so often you get that bit of adrenaline because you feel like you've got a bit better, and you just want to keep going and keep going and keep going.
Yeah. Going back to the car setup, I think it's interesting that what you say about the direct servo. Everyone's gone to the direct servo pretty much, right? But I've always run the direct servo on my mod car because Ollie told me to. But my stock car that I ran at Poole, and we were in the same final at Poole, with the bell crank was so easy to drive, and I said this to Stu earlier in the podcast, that I just didn't need to worry about driving the car, and all I had to worry about was going as fast as I could through every section. So I think it's interesting that you said that you find it easier to run 8 minutes with the direct. So what feel difference do you feel you've got there?
I felt like the bell crank over an 8-minute run was, it was super fast at the start, and it was, I could be it was a lot more reactive in the car, like initial steering and things like that. But towards, when with the direct, I feel like, I can sit it in the middle of the track the whole 8 minutes.
Right.
Whereas with the bell crank for me would be like, for example, like, if you did a super pole or something like that, and you wanted to hit a super fast lap. But for me, I just made too many mistakes with the bell crank because it was just too lively for me.
Yeah, interesting.
Are you gonna maybe venture back to the bell crank, or if you can tame the beast and find a few tenths there, is that something that you might look to do in the future?
Yeah, maybe if we do a lot of club racing, so it'd be something to try again at a club race, and see if I like it again, or maybe it was just for me at the moment. It's I try a lot. Ollie does a lot and shows me a lot of things, and then I feel like sometimes I might want to try it again because my driving maybe improves each time. And maybe those things that back then, maybe like, I don't know, a year ago or 6 months ago, I didn't quite like, that maybe now could be a bit faster if I could drive them.
So what are your aspirations going forwards, Morgan? Where would you like to be sort of a year from now? What's the goal?
I'd like to, build my ranking in the national series a bit better after the Worlds. We've got Euros coming up. I'd like to, now making an A final at the Worlds, my target's an A final at Euros. But mainly nationals. I want to try and progress up through the nationals a bit more. And I always get, like the last couple of nationals on a Sunday, I've been close to scraping an A, but I just was a bit untidy towards the end of a run. So that's the sort of thing I want to get by this time next year.
And obviously Chesterfield is this weekend.
Yep.
They've really stepped out there. I was saying again earlier in the podcast about how Chesterfield have really stepped up their game there with Kevin and his team. They've really showcased how good a club can be at 12 scale. Is that a venue that you enjoy going back to?
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's my favourite,
yeah.
but I wouldn't say it's my worst. Like in previous races, that's the sort of been my sort of devil track, I suppose, and that's where it all seems to go wrong. But no, I like, Andy designs really cool tracks, and when you turn up and you look at them, you go, yeah, that looks cool to race on. But yeah, that's probably, to be fair, that's probably a venue that I'd like to improve at a bit more. That's sort of like my weakness, I suppose.
Good. Well, have you got any sponsors that you want to say a shout out to and thank for all the support, or anyone in particular? Now is your time.
Well, obviously, I'd like to thank Ollie and Max for making such a great race car, and Lee Moss and Steve at the Worlds helping me out, and they're really good people, and they're always willing to help anybody, I suppose. And then also thanks to X Factory UK, they support me with stuff, and yeah, that's about it.
Well, Morgan, listen, we wish you well at the weekend. I'll be seeing you at Chesterfield. But listen, it's been great to watch your progress, and I both enjoy seeing you move up the ranks. And listen, we hope that 8 final in the Euros is clearly on the radar, but is easily achievable, and we hope it goes well for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good luck, Morgan.
Thank you.
Cheers, buddy. See you later.
Cheers.
Bye.
Interviews.
So next on the show, we've got Andy Murray, the most recent world champion at stock 12 scale. Congratulations and welcome to the show, Andy.
Hi, Stu. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be on your first or early episode of the new show. It sounds really cool.
Thanks very much. It's nice to have you on. So obviously, it's been probably been a huge week a couple of weeks ago, but not only the week itself, the build up to it has been from a Schumacher standpoint. And I were talking earlier on the show about really how hard that Schumacher have worked at getting their foot in the door with 12 scale, because forgive me if I'm incorrect with this, but 12 scale wasn't really your remit a good few years ago, but over the last few years you've really had, obviously with the Atom and now the Eclipse, with the efforts that you've put in, you guys must be absolutely pumped with the result that you got, winning both mod and stock.
It was a fantastic result. Obviously, I'm especially thrilled, and I'm sure everyone at Schumacher is buzzing about the results. So I guess 4 years ago, 12 scale, I'll say recent 12 scale for Schumacher wasn't a thing, since the Eclipse platform. Obviously, Schumacher was heavily involved in sort of early 12 scale in the 80s, and so since then, it's been about 4 years ago the project started, really. So it's really cool. Obviously, this is the first 12 scale World Championship we've attended since the Eclipse was born as well. So it was pretty awesome.
And was the Atom the sort of the build up to getting to 12th, or did the success of the Atom then make you go, hang on a second, we might be able to take this into 12 scale?
Actually, no, I don't know exactly how it worked out, but when I started at Schumacher, it was nearly 5 years ago, so just before all this. And I'd just actually only done a little bit of GT12 racing. GT12 was quite early, or at least early in its popularity sort of stage. And I was actually racing 12 scale for maybe 2 or 3 years before joining Schumacher, maybe more actually. So it was something that Robin was aware of, and I think it was always on the cards for us to join 12 scale. But my first project was the Atom, so yeah, the Atom was successful, and it gave us some ideas, but it was probably always on the cards.
So your involvement with the Atom, did that just follow on that you then got involved with the design of the 12 scale, or were you always earmarked as the guy that was going to help with the 12 scale and the design? I've got that right, that obviously you were very much involved with the platform.
Yeah, I mean, there's a team of 5 or 6 of us in the design team at Schumacher, but the way we tend to work is we have one lead project per person, and then everyone else in the department contributes, and obviously team drivers and everything contribute. But yeah, there's one person doing the CAD design and following up the whole project. So I think it was always planned, actually. I think actually we started doing the Eclipse project maybe slightly after the Atom project, but both of them before any of the cars were released. So yeah, it wasn't because of success or anything of the Atom, or how that project had gone, and that obviously influenced the design of the Eclipse in the end. But the early 12 scale, the early Eclipse prototypes were very much like the other cars on the market, and obviously I guess most people listening have seen the Eclipse is quite innovative compared to the trend, so that was influenced by the Atom, obviously. But yeah, the early cars, I did the Reedy race at Milton Keynes with a car which was basically kind of a hybrid of X-rays and associated with like our own carbon fiber bits made, so we could adjust more and tweak the wheelbase and track width and things more easily. And that project went on for maybe, a good 9 months. Before then we tried, I think actually just after the Atom was launched, we then tried the car as a 12 scale effectively. The original Atom design, we changed the necessary bits to make it legal and fit the rules for 12 scale, and yeah, then it sort of changed the benchmark for what we were planning to do, really.
And when did you feel that you were onto something that was obviously performing well on the track? Was there a sense of, do you know what, this is something that is really obviously very different in its profile? To have something like that is different and performs must have been a bit of a eureka moment, or a very exciting moment for you.
There was a day after the MP Models 12 scale national. I can't remember which year it was, but it was one of the the 12 scale nationals at MP Models, and I run an X-ray car, a complete X-ray. I had obviously the 2-day format, so 2 different classes each day, but we run the X-ray in stock and then modified. And this was before 6.5, so it was open 3.5 boosted as well. And yeah, we stayed on at MP Models for the Monday after, where I ran that car for the first time. It was just fundamentally an Atom in its design with some parts moved around. And we were doing 5-minute test runs. So the plan was to run the car that I did the whole national with, the X-ray, as like set a time, and then go out with all things equal, body shell the same, tyres brand new the same, and everything, and just see where it was straight out. Just basically with the Atom setup and everything, but with a 3.5 turn motor, different rear axle, and this was actually using a widened Atom beam front end, so actually more like the Eclipse 2 than the Eclipse 1, if you see what I mean. So the Eclipse 1 had a different front, but it was more like an Eclipse 2. And my 5-minute time was over a lap faster on its first ever run. So that was a clear eureka moment. It yeah, I mean, to be fair to the extra, I struggled all weekend. So the setup I was never quite happy with, even at the end and in the final. But I was in the A main in modified, and it was like 5th or 6th or something. So it was going okay. But then, the first run I was a lap faster in 5 minutes. So
Wow.
that kind of scrapped all of our original 12 scale prototypes and everything. And then we ran with that. But the interesting thing was there was a lot of discussion about the front end, because it was okay, the car's working great, but the front end just can't be seen as commercially available to 12 scale scene. It needs to be a dynamic strut front end and have all these things. So in the end, we looked into having a Xenon front end at first on that car, and then we ended up with a Kawada OEM style front end. So we bought off Kawada in Japan. And basically, in the end, I wish we hadn't, because a year later, I continued testing in private with the Eclipse 2 front end. And then eventually, I ran it again at the Tamworth National and the Poole National, where both times I was on the podium on the first 2 meetings where I was allowed to run that original kind of beam style front end. So then clearly when the results were there, then ideas changed and the Eclipse 2 arrived with some other changes.
Incredible. I mean, what a proud moment for you. I mean, that's obviously the moment where you thought, and obviously probably Robin and the guys around you really felt like you had something. Was it at that point there that you thought, right, well, let's go full steam ahead with the 2020 Worlds in your mind at that point, or what, was that a bit too far away?
No, the Worlds wasn't in our mind at that point. But yeah, we wanted to. Actually, being honest, we wanted to get some sort of car out, and it had gone so well in the first place. We were originally planning to make our own molded front end, which takes quite a lot more time and resources. But we wanted to get some sort of car out to create a team and start getting the team and getting people working with, me and the guys from Schumacher. So that's when we brought in the front end, so we could make that next season. And with the Eclipse 1, it was a pretty good car, pretty successful, but it never quite worked. That first day, like I said, it sort of blew me away, like how instantly drivable, like just a completely random setup with like random everything just worked straight away, easier to drive than the cars I ran before. So then that's why we went back to it effectively. And I can't quite remember why it was kind of like, I mean, I said about the commercial availability, commercial aspects of it, and how it probably wouldn't be seen as like 12 scale racer friendly, and it's not the same and too much change. But it was that good that I don't know why I didn't sort of push for it to definitely be on the car, really, because it was a bit of a shame at first.
And so obviously then the Worlds came about and you guys moved on, but let before we go on and talk about the Worlds, going back a little bit, what's your background in obviously product design and the physics of car racing, and how it all goes together, and the understanding of what could work, might work, doesn't work? Where does that all come from? That you obviously studied that at uni, have you, or college, or where's your background in design?
Actually, all my sort of RC racing experience came from RC racing and not any sort of formal education at first.
Okay.
I'd studied at uni, but not engineering. And then I moved on from uni and started working for Leyland Trucks, or Leyland Motors, people know it as. And I was doing engineering sort of education there. But I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't enjoying life in the big sort of, machine that is 1,000 members of staff sort of company. Exactly. I wasn't enjoying it, and actually Schumacher put I don't know if you asked this, but I was put the reason I went to Schumacher after that was because because of that I wasn't happy. And actually I didn't mean to join Schumacher. I got a few friends messaging me saying Schumacher have put a post on the internet about how they've got a job offering, and probably 5 people messaged me, said it's designed for you, even though it said CAD experience, which I didn't have any of. Loads of people messaged me. So then I basically was like, well, clearly I've not got CAD skills. I've not got this and that. But I emailed Robin asking him, Robin Schumacher, asking him like what I would need to do. Like, how would I be able to apply for a job if it came along again, like this one in the future? And basically, he was, well, still happy to listen to my call. So he told me to Skype with him the day after, actually. And then, I accidentally applied for the job, which is I'm really grateful for now.
And obviously, it certainly helps that you're stellar on the sticks as well, doesn't it? I mean, that's obviously an asset to any design team, that you can go out, race to a high level, and put the designs to a test. Which is that something that Robin knew about, that you were obviously an accomplished racer before joining the team?
I mean, I was never like, winning nationals or anything, but I was kind of, well, in GT12 actually, it was kind of Adam Catchpole dominating at the time with actually his Mardev Assassin, SE12, and I was, no, sorry, I got that wrong. He was running the first Zen car, and I was running the Mardev Assassin. And there was a few races where Robin came and saw, because I was struggling a little bit with the Superstocks GT at the time. So there was kind of like me and him dominating, as loads of the guys were using a Schumacher GT. And these cars were a little better. So I was front running, but I mean, to go back to your original question about like, it was basically just, racing experience, testing experience, and like trying things myself. And Robin saw that at the races, and I was kind of doing this sort of trackside job anyway, because I was going around helping the racers just because that's what I enjoyed doing and stuff. But also clearly I made the cars, and it's certainly in the Mardev case, we sort of developed the car, and I think he came to ask me about it at the track just before I went for my physical interview, and I was telling him what I'd done with Chris Wilkinson on Mardev and what we'd changed this and that, and I suggested this. So I think a lot of those skills do come from 12 scale. So the testing, and actually I did a full year of kind of, I'd say 20 hours a week at the Blackpool permanent track, which it's a shame it left, but I was running that club at the time. And I didn't do any racing except 12 scale nationals. And basically we just spent all weekend there from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. Saturday, Sunday, and Friday every week for about a year. And we're just trying stuff. So I guess that's where I got my sort of experience and testing knowledge and
and clearly something obviously you enjoyed. So the obviously how it then moved on with the car and really feeling like you could compete at the Worlds. Obviously, then it had the Euros at the Huddy Arena last year in 2019. I mean, I was there, and I run the X-Ray, and I battled. I mean, the track was unforgiving. You didn't have to do too much wrong to break a car, but goodness me, the Schumachers. I mean, I remember watching Lewis Barker racing around, and he had a couple of big hits and just kept on going like nothing had ever happened. And I thought that was, as well as the performance of the car, and if you're looking to the wider reach of 12 scale, to have a car that's that robust, I mean, that is a huge asset for you as well. Is that something that you feel has been a big part of it, as well as the performance of the car? Is that something that the guys are saying, goodness me, it's super robust?
Yeah, that's kind of like the first aim before performance was we knew that 12 scale cars are quite fragile and delicate, and that's seen from the races in the other classes, that 12 scale is this class that it's like an art form to make it work, and then if you crash, then it's maybe never the same. And so our first, actually, that was the thing that we lost the most when we went to the Eclipse 1 with a different front end, because it was clear straight away that how robust and reliable, like even like in terms of not tweaking or the trim going out or anything. When I first ran the first prototype with a beam front, it's very robust and dependable compared to maybe some of the other cars. But like I said, with performance as well. So it's clearly an advantage. I think back to like when there was a national at Dorset when I first ran that front. No, it was the second race I ran the front end, but basically the first time I ran like a prototype Eclipse 2 with the top decks and things. And I was driving around with Alex Hagberg, and I couldn't believe that I was keeping up with him. And it was like the car was like amazing considering it. Like I said before, it was like just put on. We hadn't really gone back to testing it, but I ran it for those nationals to kind of prove that we could go back to that front end, and it did have the pace that we said at MB models. But I was driving around with Hagberg and thinking, like, I'm able to keep up with him here because I'm chucking the kitchen sink at it and like just, sending it into every corner, not worrying, clipping a few corners, bouncing off them, carrying on. And he's driving in the more 12 scale typical way where you have to respect every barrier. You clip one, then your run's going to be slower for the next 7 minutes because it's tweaked or the front end's gone out slightly or something. And I just remember thinking how hard I was attacking and thinking no one else is driving it like this because they're scared of touching the wall.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think it was the class of the show at the Huddy Arena for me. Just outside looking in, and obviously your background, Schumacher and the buggies, and bringing in Michael Lowski to drive and a few of the other buggy guys. I mean, their adaptation to the car, to the platform, and driving it is really lovely to watch. I mean, they obviously going from 3D to 2D racing is obviously a lot easier, but just their car control is really on point with 12 scale. Does their knowledge carry over to the 12 scale cars, or is that something? I know I spoke to you, I think, on the Wednesday or the Thursday at the World, saying, are you looking forward to the week? And there was a sense of trepidation because you had cars to build and look after for various individuals. Is that really how it works when those guys come to race 12 scale?
It's getting better. Obviously, they've done a few races now, but the Euros particularly was pretty hard work. Let's say I'm glad it did go quite well because for Michael, he'd done the previous Euros and maybe a test for it, and also a test the XRS race at Huddy Arena just before the European Championship that year. But Jorn had done that one test and no racing ever with 12 scale. That's Jorn Neumann, I mean.
Yeah.
And yeah, to see them go so well there was ace. Jorn missed TQ by tenths and he'd never raced 12 scale, so it was awesome. But for me and Nathaniel Goodban, I was basically working on Michael's cars there, and obviously they were both racing two classes as well. And Jorn was racing two classes, so Nathan was doing his cars. And they weren't touching the cars. I mean, Michael's dad was touring tyres for us, and we had to prepare their two cars. But you would think that some setup stuff would carry over, but they're too scared to implement it. So it goes back to like our knowledge from myself and Nathan and the rest of the guys in the Schumacher team, like Mark Jewett and Lewis Parker and stuff. So they were relying on us for like setup stuff, but clearly when they get to the sticks, it doesn't matter. They've hardly raced it before because they can drive the wheels off it like anyone, I guess. So
the obviously doing so well in the Euros, not necessarily winning, but obviously had a really good turnout, very competitive. Obviously, eyes then turn to the Worlds, and Ant's description was that Schumacher hit it with a big stick, as in you guys threw the kitchen sink at it. I mean, you obviously some really big name drivers, and obviously Mark Reinhard being up there with those big name drivers. How did the Mark Reinhard thing come about? Is that something that you can talk about, or I mean, obviously, if that's not something you can talk about, don't talk about it. But how did the Mark Reinhard deal come about for you guys?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a massive surprise. Obviously, Reinhard is like a hero of mine, and obviously a lot of RC racers like he's a legend of RC. So we got an email from his brother Tony at first, sort of. We're looking to try some cars, and yeah, we'd like to try Schumacher, and I was like breathtaking. So then obviously we said, well, we'll help you however you need help, and yeah, came to us and asked for a car, so they tried it and got on with it. So yeah, so we helped him all we could, and obviously it was worthwhile in the end. He smashed it, and I mean he'd done like 2 or 3 runs with the car before the Worlds. It's unbelievable how he could just turn up like that. I think maybe 3 runs maximum he'd done with the car. We built it for him and sent it to him, but he got it and tried it once with Jorn and went home early. His car's fine. He actually sent me a message saying, it's good, but the power's a little slow, so I'll try a 3.5 turn in the next run instead of a 4 turn. And then I got a thumbs up and say, yeah, that power's good now. And they went home.
Wow.
Didn't even put a transponder in the car. So it's
really?
Proof of how legendary he is to turn up with that much confidence. Obviously, a really big moment for him in his life as well, with his other racing commitments going, like plans going downhill and needing to sort out different arrangements. So actually, I was wondering if he was going to want to come and, consider he barely touched the car. Obviously, a bad result might hurt him in trying to find a new employer for his main racing career. But clearly, ultimate confidence in himself, and he pulled it off. So it's pretty awesome.
And to pull it off from where he qualified, am I right in saying 4th on the grid? He qualified.
Yeah.
It was stalking his prey. The whole three finals, wasn't it? It was fantastic to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it did look. His drive had a look of like knowledge about it compared to the others almost.
I agree.
I mean, okay, Michael, like we said, he can drive the wheels off it, and he's adapting to the car. And he did do testing, and clearly his pace was very good. But and the young Yoshi Yanagisawa as well, he was ahead. And I mean, Ollie was maybe unfortunate ahead of him because he obviously had good pace in the finals as well. But in all the races, it almost looked inevitable that Mark was coming through. It looked like he was just waiting and like planning his moves, and it was pretty awesome to watch.
So, on the back of it, has there been eclipses flying out the door like there's no tomorrow? Has it had an impact? I mean, everybody says wins on Sunday, sells on Monday. I just don't subscribe to that, because I think that's old school mentality, because I think it goes beyond that. But prove me wrong. Have you sold 1 million eclipses on the Monday?
We didn't sell 1 million, but we did. But it clearly increased our sales. It was obviously worth winning. It did sell on Monday.
Shit.
But it's I mean, it was the highest rate of sales. Also, actually, at the Euros, we increased our sales the week after as well, because obviously we won the Stock European Championship with Michael and Neil and did well. So. Yeah. It does help a lot, but I think, and also I know Robin's such a mentality is not that it sells on Monday, it's that you have to continue to prove and continue to have a team that pounds in the results every week and is always dependable, and that's when you start to get credibility. Clearly, the Worlds is maybe a little different. It kind of proves to the people who, especially with our sort of radical design, that maybe that doesn't work as a 12 scale. Then those guys buy into it all of a sudden, but to the guys who already sort of trusted the design, you kind of have to sell it to the racers multiple times to sort of prove that it's not just a chance and a win. And, we got lucky or something. So it's part of it, but it's not like job done. We can stop developing and stop trying and testing and racing now. You have to keep proving it to maintain sales kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, I could talk to you all night, because it's such a fascinating topic, and I think that the car is stellar. The reason why I think it's stellar, a fewfold, is because I think you've made a very smooth progression from GT12 racing into 12 scale racing, and I think whilst GT12 has maybe taken a bit of a back step, whilst I think there's still a huge opportunity to move that forwards. Someone that is brand loyal and drives a Schumacher GT12 car, an Atom, and then wants to plunge into 12 scale, I think that progression becomes much, much easier and much less daunting from someone, a bit of a joker like me, that went from a GT12 car to a 12 scale car. That leap was huge, and it's taken a long time too, and even now I don't feel like I've got the grasp of it, but the journey for someone driving an Atom going to an Eclipse, I think is really great, and I think that can only be good for the 12th scale as a size class, GT12 12 scale. It can only be a good thing, and I think testament to how hard you guys have worked. I see, I love Steve Donald. I always take the Mickey out of him at Nationals. His car just goes round and round. It just repeats. He goes out there, sticks it down, runs it for 8 minutes, never crashes, and if he does tap it, it never breaks, and he just goes out there. And I think, you talking over 8 minutes, what we were doing with Morgan earlier in the show, that ability to repeat for 8 minutes, have a car that's there for you, is a big part of 12 scale. It's not just about the hot lap, because I'm all about the hot lap, Andy.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Our car.
But a car that keeps repeating and is robust is something not to be sniffed at, and it clearly, from my experience of Huddy and obviously the performance at the Worlds, you've done a really great job, and well done to you.
Thank you very much,
Andy. Thanks so much for your time. As I say, I think it would be, if you're up for it, we'd love to get you back on the show again and talk some more about some of the other, your other passions of obviously touring car. And I know you love your GT12 racing as well. But thanks so much for coming on the show. Anything you want to say in terms of thanking sponsors, anyone that helps you out, mum and dad, that kind of thing? Now's your time.
Okay. Well, thanks to Schumacher for trusting in me to join. With lacking experience. Thanks to my parents for letting me do it, and also to George Brewer for basically letting me race at the World Championships. Without him going and basically doing everything to my car, I couldn't have raced. So thanks, George.
So that's the end of the show. I think it's been a great first edition. I hope you've all enjoyed it. I want to thank our guests, Morgan Williams and the stock champion of the world, Andy Murray, my partner in crime, Ant, and leave your reviews at the bottom, and we'll be back very soon. All the best for now.